Thank you, Dr. Yu, for the cordial introduction. Hello, everybody. Again, my name is Yunsik Jang. I'm working for Legal Informatics and Forensic Science, focusing cybercrime and digital forensics in Hallym University, which is in Chuncheon City. I'm very grateful to the KIC for allowing me to speak in this international forum for cybercrime. What I'm going to talk about today is the key issues in cybercrime capacity building, especially focusing on law enforcement. Criminal justice has a primary responsibility to handle criminal matters. It may include prevention, mitigation, detection, investigation, prosecution, and adjudication of crime and criminals, though cybercrime is not an exception. To do those jobs properly, criminal justice agents need different tools, capability, especially for cybercrime they have never experienced before. So easily, capacity building in criminal justice or cybercrime capacity, shortly CCB hereafter for myself, became a focus of national cybercrime policies, open cybersecurity policies more broadly. Since around 2000, there have been a lot of international CCP programs and projects to reduce the capacity gaps among countries. Some of them were conducted as a part of international development cooperation among donors and recipients. Today, I would focus more on the issues in the CCP programs which are implemented between developed and developing country relations. Unfortunately, regarding time constraint, let me skip some slide. For example, this is prepared to distinguish the cybercrime matters from other cyber agendas. We discussed cybercrime definition so far, focusing to distinguish from other crimes, but one thing we have to address is cybercrime should be distinguished from other cyber agendas, including cybersecurity, something like that. So that is too long, so let me skip it. Okay, and sorry for that. Simply put, capacity building is to be armed with organizational and individual capabilities to solve problems, including physical infrastructure and equipment, knowledge and skills, and other resources. One definition of CCB was proposed by the Council of Europe, saying cybercrime capacity building is enabling criminal justice authorities to meet the challenge of cybercrime and electronic evidence. See, it's about criminal justice of authorities, it's about cybercrime, but it's also about electronic evidence. Not all digital evidence is for cybercrime, but more for non-cybercrime. Anyway, most of all, the deficit of law enforcement capacity against cybercrime and e-evidence have been complained a lot, as you know. One thing to stress is that in the context of international development, the focus have been moved from physical and financial infrastructure to human resources development and organizational and institutional development for the last decades. Simply do not buy something for them, rather teach them, rather change their society and organization. That is a reflection of experiences in the international development corporations. And now, what would be CCB for law enforcement agencies? As organizations, many of law enforcement agencies are named police. That is, the law enforcement is just the police. But in terms of functionalities, law enforcement and policing might be different. Law enforcement is focused on investigation and punishment and deterrence through them. As you know, classical criminological theory focuses on deterrence by reactive punishment. Policing is regulation for maintenance of order, especially for crime prevention. Some police theories focuses more on the anticipating and proactive prevention measures. We may think of community policing, problem-oriented policing, and some more on this. Without doubt, the police do policing in conventional fashion. But how about the cyberspace? What the police do on cyberspace for the purpose of policing? Does police regulate internet access and activities? Is the case? So one problem is to decide what to do against the cybercrime on cyberspace and the role of law enforcement agencies when considering CCB plans, especially in network of cybersecurity. To illustrate my point more, let me introduce the case of Korean police. As you know, Korea is quite advanced in ICT, and now cyber policing is on mainstream in police. They have a cyber bureau separated from criminal investigation bureau. So unlike the case of the most of jurisdictions. As of 2019, more than 11% of all crimes were categorized as cybercrime in Korea. And 1.5% of police forces are cyber police officers exclusively. To my knowledge, this is the ratio in the world. Since the establishment of Cyber Bureau and implementation of Cyber Safety Master Plan in 2014, Korean police prioritized cybercrime prevention. Many policies for cybercrime prevention have been implemented and evaluated. I introduced some preventive measures taken by Korean police using the situational crime prevention frameworks. The Korean police have qualified cybercrime prevention instructors. They actually teach in the school. We observed many young people carefully listen to cyber cops and effective in raising cybercrime awareness. They have cyber neighborhood watch program as well. They developed several apps to alert and inform cybercrime and to receive cybercrime report. They received approximately 240,000 cybercrime reports using PC and mobile apps only in 2019. Quite remarkable numbers. This kind of the police activities are not common in most of jurisdictions out of Korea. Who and how do the police able to develop the better policies for cybercrime prevention? Again, I think the uniqueness of Korean police may demonstrate the diverse possibilities in developing cybercrime response activities, especially in my point, the CCB as well. So we sometimes may develop a best practice model for a complex job to illustrate the relation of elements of work to guarantee the best outputs and outcomes. Then we may develop a best practice model to illustrate the required organizational and individual elements and processes to solve cybercrime from the top to bottom. I drew the diagram to depict complexity among many different factors in considering CCB. In the top level, international and national dimension, governance, norm, principle, and other issues might be discussed. As you know, in some countries, free flow of information is important, but security is more important in other countries. In some countries, digital evidence exchange is more important, when sovereignty is more important in other countries. Some claims multi-stakeholderism, when others prefer intergovernmental approaches. Cybercrime and/or cybersecurity strategies may declare that what are value and principles to pursue, what are goals to achieve, what to do by whom, and so on. So, national cybersecurity strategies have been implemented in many countries, and international organizations publicize guidelines for development of cybersecurity strategies. In conventional cybercrime training focuses were in the lowest level activities, unfortunately. They learned how to identify criminals and analyze digital forensics, mostly for deterrence purposes. However, even though lack of macro level capacity might be more fundamental and serious, those issues have rarely discussed in the most of the training programs. Now, let me talk more about international cooperation for CCB. It's natural that the resource, knowledge, and skills are more seriously insufficient in developing countries. Considering the nature of borderless cybercrime and even to contribute the international development cooperation and law enforcement cooperation in general, CCB was easily selected as a theme for international cooperation. The need of CCB have been recognized in many international dialogues, even in Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Based on international dialogues, there are a number of actual CCB activities, multilateral and bilateral. Multilateral activities are usually coordinated by international organizations, among others. I think the Council of Europe's CCB activities are the most active, requiring legislation based on Convention on Cybercrime. There are also bilateral programs. As just one example, we have a project between Bangladesh police and KICA. KICA is an agency responsible for international development grants in Korea. I mentioned about a best practice model framework for discussion. Then what elements would be included in national level CCB programs? A model, again, proposed by Council of Europe encompasses 12 areas for CCB. Among 12 areas, I think at least 10 of them, red colored in the slide, are closely related to the police. However, there are some inherent pitfalls in international cooperation. So most of all, it's costly, including travel cost, needless to say, and international cooperations are based on friendly relationship, which may make it very hard to criticize objectively. I think we don't have many researches and publications on the matter, somewhat because of it. Various participants and differences also make CCB cooperation difficult, even including language barrier. Let me talk more specifically in conventional cybercrime trainings. Trainees visit trainers' places to learn the best practices. Once trained, the trainees are expected to come back to their country and teach their people as a trainer with their own training program. We expect to teach fishing instead of feeding a person. However, the expectation is hardly realized. Many of trainings are the lack of so-called quality training. Many training programs are training and trainers are ad hoc, not well developed, not permanently residential. Many programs are too short to teach inexperienced persons. In many cases, trainees are not qualified. In many cases, training pathway were not considered, which make incremental learning difficulty. In my experience, I met some officers who have never used computer mice by their hands before the training. In an international trainer program. And most of the training focuses on how low technical skills, and they have a rare chance to have knowledge about managerial capability for cybercrime policing. Furthermore, I think there are more fatal organizational problems which may make all of the training effort insufficient. First, many officers, especially in developing countries, don't want to work in cybercrime unit. I heard some reasons from different countries, but I think it's not appropriate to mention the details. Even if any officers are well trained, it's common to fail in retention of the trained officers. Unlike expectation, teaching a trainer often doesn't contribute to organizational capacity enhancement because conversion of test knowledge of individual to exploited knowledge of organization is not well managed in developing countries. Sometimes we observe that the newly learned skill were misused mostly for political reasons. There are some efforts to address those issues I mentioned. One of them are to make a training courses based on the competency standard required for jobs and positions. The diagram in the slide shows one of them. I think we need to develop much more to be implemented practically. I may know cybersecurity workforce, you may know cybersecurity workforce framework in the US, and we have Korean police's cybercrime competency standard model for entire police. Regardless of international standardization, we may need any of competency framework to adopt in CCB project in accordance with the recipient organization regulations. Now let me talk the recipient-based model that many projects adopted. In the model, different trainers visit the trainees and provide customized program to them. And so recently it's more prevalent. Required model is not best practice, but best fit model for recipient. If the provided model is not fit well in the recipient country, it wouldn't work as expected and it wouldn't be sustainable. The problem is that developing suitable CCB model for a recipient is an extremely hard job. Competency standard is just one of the problems we face. Again, for illustration, let me introduce Bangladesh-Korea CCP project between 2012 to 16. Grant size was approximately $3 million. Obviously, immediate expected output of the project was competent cybercrime unit for cyber investigation and digital forensics. Initially, there was a goal to general IT training capability. The goal has been eliminated later because they developed a much larger IT capacity initiative by themselves. Instead, we expanded their focus from cyber crime investigation to overall cyber policing, to name their organization as Cyber Police Center. For this, we constructed their offices, procured the hardware and software, and we trained them, and we dispatched experts to consult for organizational management capabilities. This is the facility and equipment provided. This is overall training development framework divided into manager training and train the trainer programs. We designed the various training components regarding training path, cost, goals, etc. The pictures shows various training activities in Korea and Bangladesh. For management, we identified 3 areas: infrastructure, human resources, and operation and activities. Strategies, policies, plans, SOPs, and manuals were developed for them. This project evaluated successful by the KIC and Bangladesh government. So from the end of this year, the KIC will grant the second phase of project with around $5 million this time. So based on the task so far, let me point out some key issues divided into national and organizational level. To be more effective, CCP project should be national, not only for law enforcement. For sustainable development, the police may need to be financially supported, organizationally prioritized. Principles and other top-level cybercrime best practice elements should be discussed and documented as early as possible. Harmonization with existing national strategies and policies is essential, which may require much more research and feasibility study before planning. That's I always relate. Object need assessment and the need goal setting is important because we may have different goals for cybercrime. As I mentioned, international development focus moves from infrastructure to management and governance, but it's common that the recipient prepare infrastructure first, the steps capacity next, and management, the government rest. So their interests sometimes conflict between recipient to donor. For project development and implementation, forming consensus among participating stakeholders are extremely important. Cybersecurity and cybercrime are never being discussed in the same understanding. Management trainings are not easy. Is it working? Yeah. And management trainings are not easy and often neglected. It should be strategically approached. We need more R&D about CCP even in developed countries, because we don't have cybercrime statistics in any developed countries as well. For example, cybercrime statistics is not easy. So doing it in developing countries is even harder. We need cybercrime capacity assessment too, because we don't know how to assess the capability. Then how can we decide how to improve that? So we may refer cybersecurity posture, such as Global Cybersecurity Index by the ITU, but we may need a similar effort in cybercrime areas as well. We may need more specific tools such as cybercrime statistics method, digital forensic laboratory quality assurance manual to promote organizational management capability. In conclusion, today there are many CCP programs and projects consuming substantial resources for international development cooperation. However, it's not easy to assess actual results from the CCP projects because it's rarely spoken publicly. It's obvious there are many challenges to address in CCP programs. I discussed some of them today, but it must be much more complex tasks. To develop and implement the better programs and to evaluate the results objectively and to learn lessons from the improvement, we may need to share more information about them. We may need more researches. We may need to develop standardized methodologies together. I look forward to keep talking on this topic more often in the international forums for cybercrime in the future. Thank you for your attention.